Carla, good evening to you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. I did take my mic off mute. I'm delighted to be here, and I was just eavesdropping a little bit on your conversation.
We love having you here.
I'm happy to be here tonight, and I think the discussion about bringing in people from the outside world to talk about some of these topics is really important as you look at this approach to education for the university, because one of the things that university systems struggle with across the board historically is that it takes a while for a practice to become a best practice in the real world. And then at the time that it's recognized by universities, then there's all sorts of rigor put behind it, research to prove it through, and then it's put into place in the classroom, and then students go through the curriculum, they graduate, and then it goes into the real world. So this cycle is generally 4 to 6 years. So from the time something is a hot, important topic until people are trained on it and use it in the real world, there's a significant lag time. And especially when you look at everything that businesses have been through in this last year, there is no way that any business could afford to wait 6 years to get people on board to learn the thinking of what needs to be done, particularly in a time of significant change and needing employees who are highly adaptable. So it's a tremendous reflection on that idea of being more innovative in how classes are taught, how students learn. And I want to recognize that, because I think that's a really important element to start out with. Now, as it comes to innovation in organizations, I have a question as we start out is, how do you define innovation? If somebody walked up to you or asked you at work or whatever and said, what's your definition of innovation? What would you say?
Who would take this? What's innovation? Actually, we covered this a little bit earlier.
Yeah, innovation is a novel approach using creativity to solve a problem in a way that hasn't either existed or is in a different way. Brings about positive change or any kind of positive impact to the company.
Who else would take? Carla, is that satisfactory, or we need more answers?
Yeah, I was just curious if that's the definition that everybody would use, or does anybody else have a different variation on that?
How about outside the box, thinking outside the box? Is that something you can use, guys?
Yeah.
What else? Because remember, you're talking to the master here. She is the one that invented.
I guess if I could add on to what I said, throughout my career, I think of a couple instances where I presented ideas to the organization and got, kind of pushback, on things. But it took a few years for it to take hold. And I see as though, those years or those experiences as innovation, took time, kind of what you just said at the beginning here about, 5-6 years or something to kind of incubate. And I think about that. There was creativity, there was not, a sense of novelty of what I was presenting, to that particular organization. And, the organization kind of, took it in and did what it wanted with it, pushed it out, didn't like it, but eventually, took it in, and it eventually changed a part of the culture. So I see culture change and things like that you can see as, the outputs or the impacts of innovation too. Just want to add that there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think even innovation itself is an output if you really looked at how the whole process goes and how it works, because innovation happens because of other things that have fallen into place. And interestingly, you could ask 20 different executives, even often from the same organization, what is innovation, and you could get 40 different definitions. And I was telling Abe that this morning I was talking to a client in, they're a Japanese company, and their European headquarters are just outside of Geneva. And we're starting to do training for their European executives on innovation as they start to roll out an innovation platform. And one thing to know about innovation is that 90% of innovation happens outside product development, research and development, and things like that. And I think a lot of times when we think about innovation, it's what's the next product that you're going to launch. And that really is only a fraction of what true and sustainable, and that's a really important element, sustainable innovation involves. And so as I was talking to this group, one of the things that consistently came up is we don't have really a definition of innovation. You know, our executives say, we need everybody to be more innovative. We need more innovation. We need to find those blue oceans, and, you know, kind of cliche speak like that. But when you ask them, well, what does innovation mean to you? It's a lot of circular talk, because they don't really understand how to define it, or, you know, what it looks like. And if you don't know what something looks like, you can't truly describe it. And to be honest, this is very typical of a lot of organizations, is to want something that you don't truly understand because you want that outcome. And we look at these iconic companies like a Netflix or an Amazon or a Tesla, or even something like a Lego, and they're tremendously innovative. And the organizations, they want the respect and the pride and all of the PR and publicity that comes with it, and of course the revenues, but they don't understand what it takes behind the scenes to be innovative. And so when I look at innovation, I define it as the ability to consistently, really important, consistently come up with new, great, and reliable ideas. And I'll break each of those down. So I'll get to the consistently part here after we go through each of those attributes. But when you look at a new idea can be something that's never been done before, like the phone, or it can be something that has never been done like that in your industry. But just having a new idea isn't enough to be innovative. I mean, you look at things like New Coke, you look at how they ended up having to go back to their original recipe. Colgate made lasagna, definitely a new idea. I can't imagine anybody actually eating it. You know, it was just a horrific failure. R.J. Reynolds, the tobacco company, launched a line of tobacco-less smoking products. And even the CEO said, you know, we spent $350 million and ended up with a turd with a tip. So he's saying it's so awful. But the thing is that's what we tend to glamorize as innovation, is just something that's new. But if you look at companies that have been effective with new ideas, for example, the drive-through for a McDonald's is modeled after a Formula One pit stop. Now that's definitely a new idea, but what they did is they took something from another industry and they transplanted it in their own and made adjustments so it fit and it made sense. Now that's one example. The BMW iDrive is designed after video game controls. And it's that ability to see opportunities in other areas that you can then apply the elements, not the idea across the board, not a copy and paste, but the elements that make sense into your own work. So that's what a new idea looks like. Now, a great idea is a little bit more subjective. So a great idea is more subjective than what a new idea may be, but it's one that that makes you excited and evokes that emotion around it. So when you think of a great idea, things like AOL was a great idea. It's like, what? I can just use my phone and get on this thing called the internet. That's amazing. Or I can put 1,000 songs in my pocket. That's, you know, amazing. And so it's looking at an idea that just gets you so excited. But a great idea like that on its own isn't enough to be sustainable, because you look at a company like TiVo, you look at MapQuest, you know, companies like that. They were all great ideas, but they weren't ones, and they were new ideas, but they weren't ones that were reliable. They couldn't stand the test of time. And a reliable idea is one on which you can actually build a business. So those are the Netflix, the Amazons, and a lot of other companies but it's, at the end of the day, a reliable idea is one that will make you money in some way, shape, or form. And it doesn't mean that it has to directly relate to being a product that you launch. For instance, one of the companies that I profiled in my book is Park Mobile, that the phone parking app. You can pull up your phone and pay for parking. You can now start to reserve parking spaces ahead of time at entertainment venues and some street parking and some parking garages and things like that. Incredibly innovative. And twice a year, they close the entire company down and they have an innovation week. And while it was started by their chief technology officer, the reason that they are so adamant about including every single employee in the company is that they understand that other 90% of innovation is about all the rest of the side of the business. And you may have the most amazing idea in the world to be innovative, but if you can't work it through the rest of the organization and get it out the door, get it implemented, get it executed, it doesn't matter how great your idea is. And so what Park Mobile looked at is, we have these technology things we want to work on, we have product things we want to work on, but what we want to do most of all is bring everybody else into this experience of what innovation is like, so they understand it. And so a couple of weeks before they have this innovation week, they start to post the projects that the technology team is working on. The rest of the employees are welcome to sign up and be a part of those teams. It could be, you know, somebody from finance talking about how to work through the financial aspect of the product or potential product. It could be somebody in the creative group or an admin who's amazing at PowerPoints, and you know, not a lot of product people or engineers are good at communicating things. Sometimes I come from a family of engineers, so I feel that I have the right to say that. And so these are people that together as a team, they create a better innovation experience and also a better likelihood that a new idea will actually be valuable. Have empathy for the customer and the customer experience, and solve a problem. Now, it was during one of these innovation weeks that one of the employees in finance, she didn't necessarily want to work on a specific problem that was already identified, but she saw a problem in her own area. And again, back to innovation is about finding opportunities. She saw that she and others on her team were spending 40 hours a month, like manually running reports for things that had to be done. So during this week, she taught herself a programming language. She wrote a program to automate it and turn something that was 40 hours of really boring drudgery work in putting together these reports, she could now run in 20 minutes. And so that's incredibly innovative, because it's a new idea. Being able to be a programmer in finance, it's a great idea. There was a lot about it that had tremendous value. It was a reliable idea, because at the end of the day, that did make money. They estimate it saved about $90,000 a year. Now, when you think about a big company like that, $90,000, you know, can seem like a rounding error. But if you look at these opportunities to consistently, that's the key word, to consistently produce these new, great, and reliable ideas, then you start to take the cumulative effect of all of these employees finding new opportunities to solve problems, whether it's something internally like this woman in finance, or whether it's having greater empathy for your customer and being able to identify opportunities to better serve them, to be ahead of what they even realize that they know that they want. I mean, I think Netflix is just incredible at that. This is the core of what innovation is, and for it to be effective as a culture, it has to be identified as something that really matters. And when you look at companies that have identified their brand purpose, having it stand for something bigger than just making money is a huge characteristic of the most highly innovative organizations.
How do you maintain consistency?
And that comes down to the core values and how you actually treat those. So the companies that are truly consistently innovative like this, they have innovation as a core value or characteristics of innovation as a core value, the next step that they take is that they hire, they recognize, and they reward based on those characteristics. So it's not just it's something that we say, it's behavior
We
that's
do.
cultivated.
What we
Yeah,
also do.
and that's really a big differentiator too. Once you have purpose, is that you have to understand that in order to get that behavior, you have to recognize and reward it. And you asked me, what happens when individual values clash with the organization? Yeah, so that's one of the elements that is so important with brand purpose, because the biggest thing that it does is that it creates a filter for whether or not a candidate is the right candidate or not. Because when you have the brand purpose very prominent, it's infused into your culture. A big part of that is understanding the employer branding that comes around that. So you look at, Zappos has incredible employer branding. So you start to look at these kinds of statistics, and it's very clear that the organizations that have a very clear purpose, that articulate that purpose, that have the values in place to support it, and then hire, recognize, and reward based on those values, have created a culture that is so productive, has a significantly higher employee engagement status, and their revenues often outpace all of their competition in the same industry by 4 to 1. So when you look at that, when you have higher revenues, you can pay higher amounts, you can give better benefits. There's all sorts of things that come along with it. And with that, then it creates this very nice cycle that then when it's time to hire, you are more likely to get better quality candidates, and you can have your pick of the type and kind of people you hire that you actually hire. When you have that brand purpose in place and hire based on that, it not only helps you filter what kind of people you will hire as a company, it also really weeds out the type of people who will apply. Because when you think about yourself and your friends in your circle or your family, there are people who they're very sure of who they are. They know what they stand for. Maybe they're vegan. They won't wear leather. They're very health conscious, because that's just not who they are. And the same thing is very, very true for a company. And the interesting thing is that the more a company is true to that identity, the more their revenues increase, because they're very focused on what they spend money on and what they pursue. And the second is that it's very clear to their market and to the employees what they stand for and what their North Star is, what their guiding principles are.
I'm glad you touched on the purpose, because in the program, this program plus another program we have, AMSOL program, we very much pay attention to the purposeful leader, because we're trying to create purposeful leaders out of these programs. And I'm very happy that you touched on it. But I want to take two things into consideration, which is rethink innovation. But you saw everything. You talked about innovation and large companies, but then you thought innovation by itself is not enough. What is rethink innovation? That's one. And also, some of the members we have, the students, they are in marketing. And I know you're a strategist in marketing, so probably you can touch on that as well. So what is rethink innovation? Brand, what does it mean to you? And just some tips on marketing. And then after this, I'm going to open the floor for probably 3 questions, because we took too much of your time. And I do thank you. I do thank you for this insight. So we'll have, please guys, prepare 3 questions and we'll just pull it quick. So this way we benefit from the presence of Carla. So go ahead, continue, please.
Yeah, absolutely. So the reason I wanted to talk about rethink innovation is because, one, we need to rethink what it actually is and understand that we need a common agreed upon definition of it. But there's another reason we need to rethink it, is because despite the fact that we say it is so important and it's one of the highest priorities for executives around the world, we don't do it. So what is it about innovation that keeps us from doing it? And there's really 3 things. One is that we overcomplicate it. And there's something called the complexity bias. And it means that the more complex something is, the more we trust it and believe it to be true. But when you start to look at innovation, much of the times the most effective innovation are the things that are, I call it innovation with a little I. So you have, disruptive innovation and big things like that. But the most effective innovation is this constant, this perpetual trail of innovation with an I, like the woman in finance who taught herself programming and was able to write the program and save a significant amount of money. We believe that it's something that only others know how to do. It could be a particular brand that's known for innovation. And we look at those brands and we start to say, I don't sell that kind of thing. We don't have those kind of budgets. I'm not in that kind of market. Those aren't our kind of buyers. And we start to make excuses for why we can't do it. And it also creates this dynamic inside an organization where they start to look at this traditional research and development group, or maybe an innovation group or design thinking group, and everybody else. And this is really true for marketers too. They point at that innovation group and they say, well, they're the innovators. We just take it and implement it. Or they're the innovators because I don't have a PhD, I'm not a design thinker, I'm not a data analyst, or whatever these excuses are. So then again, you have this innovative thinking that's very isolated within an organization. They're called innovation islands. But when you go back to a brand purpose, that's when you also infuse across the organization, this is what we do. And it frees everybody up to start to contribute in more regular day-to-day ways into innovation. And the third one, to be honest, is that we just don't know how. We have this perception that it takes a team of consultants and PhDs and huge budgets just to get started. But in truth, innovation does best when it's done in small increments. Again, looking at that cumulative effect of what innovation does over a long period of time. So that's a big reason that I wanted to have people rethink innovation. And then one of you were talking about it, about intuition and looking at things like the right financial models. It's also important to start to look at how to recognize innovation. And many times, and this is true of creativity, but as a professor said, you can't have innovation without creativity. But I think a lot of times we play things off to be innovation, or it's highly data driven, because we think it either doesn't have a process at all. And actually the highly intuitive innovators, the research that I did showed that they all actually do have a process they follow. They just don't realize it. And this is in some of the materials I sent to the professor that he'll share with you. They all have the same process for coming up with these innovative ideas. They just don't always realize it. And the other aspect is that it's back to opportunities. And sometimes we justify it by saying, well, it just made financial sense. But if there's no risk involved, then it really isn't innovative. And the most successful innovators are able to balance the familiar with that is new and has that element of risk. But whenever you can start to make some idea have some sort of familiarity with it, the likelihood that it will be adopted and supported across the organization is significantly higher. So that's the rethink innovation part. Or do you have any questions or anything else, Professor, you'd like me to cover?
Just basically the brand. What is a brand? What does a brand mean to you? And just a few insights on marketing, because we have some students their major is marketing or minor is marketing.
Yeah, absolutely. So a brand, and this really hits home for me because I grew up in rural Nebraska and we had cattle. And a brand is originally started because it was that metal, hot metal that was put on an animal to make a mark to say, this insignia shows that it is something that is owned by me. And that really is how branding started. It was earlier than, Midwest cattle ranchers, but it was that philosophy of let me mark something to show that I own it and who I am, and this stands for who I am. And that's really, historically, a brand has been a lot of times the products that are sold and the logo design. But even, and especially as we look at marketing, a brand now is an entire experience. So when you look at Disney, Disney's a great example because it doesn't matter where you enter the brand, the experience is the same. You could be a retail customer, you could go to one of the theme parks, you can go to a movie. They are consistent in the experience that they deliver. So a brand can no longer be a graphic identity. It can no longer be just the messaging. It's about the complete 360-degree experience that you deliver to an audience. It doesn't have to just be a customer. It's to anyone who interacts with that company. Now, this is particularly important for marketers because, believe it or not, marketers have been the innovators in organizations since we've been around as a profession. And if you look at innovation within an organization, there's the innovation that is the reason that the company was started. You know, there was a problem that was being solved and an opportunity to be had. But from there on out, marketers are the most innovative people within an organization. And if you look at the history of marketing, you know, we were the ones who said, okay, you know what, we need to advertise. And it was advertising that really set the brands apart. It was looking at how do we start to shift from just advertising to having marketing as an actual profession? How do we move away from just being salespeople into people who create a brand, not just around the product, but around the company itself? And the 1984 Apple Super Bowl advertisement is probably one of the biggest tipping points where you shifted from brand as a product that you sold to an organization as a brand itself. And then you move into one-to-one marketing. That was incredibly innovative. You move into social media and having significant reach, incredibly innovative. You look at things like content marketing, customer experience, all of these things are incredibly innovative, and they've all been driven by marketing. And so when we talk about marketing, and I hear marketers say, that's not my job, I just want to tell you that is, your job is nothing more than being innovative. And nice. There is, and actually now for marketers, that job is one and the same.
One and the same, and we end up with that. What a beautiful thought. What a good insight. Thank you so much, Carla.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's go ahead with 3 questions only. Who's going to take the first question?
I had a question.
Go ahead, Aaron.
It was, so what is the difference between innovating and adapting in an organization, and which is better?
You know, I think it's probably something that has some squishy connotations, and there's overlap, because it depends on, are you adapting to the status quo, or are you a company in 2020 who had to adapt to a perpetually changing market? So they do overlap, but I think where they are different depends on how you're adapting and whether that adaptability is more innovative or if it's more sticking to the status quo.
Good. So it depends really on the stage where they're at. Yeah. The stage. Okay, second question.
This is Mike. I've had a very difficult time defining. This is Mike Gastower.
Hey, Michael. Okay, where are you? Let me see, where are you?
I'm somewhere.
I know where.
I see him. I see him.
Okay, go ahead, Mike. Yeah.
We've been onboarding a new CEO. I mean, this great talk.
Thank you.
I'm actually going to ask him if he read your book.
He hasn't. He hasn't, because it hasn't been released yet. But Professor has the first 3 copies, and at the end there's a place it'll show you when it's out.
Yeah, my question specific to my industry, we have, like many companies, just values on a wall, right? What do they mean? So we're throwing a lot of money at putting definitions into those values. For innovation specifically, I know there's no right answer, but where would you begin in terms of looking how to define innovation within your own company?
Well, you know, that's like what I looked at is that definition of coming up with new, great, and reliable ideas on a consistent basis. So if you're looking to define that in a way that better fits your own company culture, I would suggest starting with what behavior characteristics do you feel support that? So for example, is it curiosity? Is it willing to be more collaborative? Because understanding, I have an assessment that I can send Professor also, you can take it. It helps people identify what kind of innovative thinker they are. So it could be curiosity, it could be collaboration, how you come together. You know, it's those characteristics of what you believe bubble up in order to deliver innovation in your organization are really the places to start. Because like we were saying is, when we first began, innovation is really an outcome. And we talk about, be more innovative. Well, that goes back to, it's like saying, well, be more fit, be more healthy. Well, how do I actually do that? Like, what does being healthy look like? What are those characteristics? And so I would suggest starting to deconstruct that definition of innovation in your own culture to define what characteristics make it up. Now, the fact that you have the values up on the wall, and I don't know, maybe nobody ever looks at them, maybe nobody could name them. It's I don't know, it's the same thing with mission and vision, and that's why a true brand purpose is so powerful, because generally it's no longer than 8 to 10 words, so people can actually remember it. And then, even if the values aren't defined, it's kind of a little bit of common sense. I know common sense is kind of uncommon about what it takes to deliver that, but you're on a better road if you can do that. But once you can define, based on your culture, the definition of the values that will create that innovation outcome as you define it, that's a great place to start.
Very nice.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Carla, I do thank you. I do thank you for this insightful.
One last question for Carla, if she's willing to answer my question.
Yes, go ahead.
With respect to innovation, you're stating that CEOs and executives in turn tend to have some sort of a process or a methodology to being innovative. In that sense, if you were to recreate or re-step in their own sense of innovation, what do the steps essentially look like in layman's terms, or the most basic terms possible, to provide an outcome of innovation?
So I'm going to back up. I'm going to clarify one thing. To be honest, most executives and CEOs do not have a process for innovation. But if you look at people like, Steve Jobs, or even someone like a creative director, or someone who seems to always have ideas just like that, they have a very natural, intuitive process that follows the same steps. And was the second part of your question, what is that process?
Yes, I believe that's what I was referring to in turn, is the intuitive process that they follow that they're not entirely aware of, as you mentioned. So
and I'll give you a little bit of background about how I got to it. And this exact process, and a short description of it is in the information that the professor will share with you. So what I did one of the questions that I had going into my book is this something that can be taught, this kind of thinking? And the short answer is yes. And so what I did is that I started to research and interview people that I found were highly innovative thinkers consistently over long periods of time. And I mean years, if not decades, periods of time. And what I would do, some people I knew, some people were referred to me, some people I just started to do research, and I could see that they were these kind of, I call them prolific innovators. And so I would call and I would interview them, and I would say, tell me about this amazing idea that you had for, the new employee recruitment campaign. How'd you get that idea? And, kind of like a lot of us, they would say, I don't know, it just came to me when I was out on a run, or just popped into my head in a shower, things like that. And so then what I did is I said, okay, tell me what you were doing right before, that, like, you pitched that idea, what did you do right before it? And then what right before that? And we would reverse engineer it back into what that inspiration was. And that's how, what I learned is that they all followed this same process, whether they realized it or not, is that these prolific innovators are highly, highly observant to the world around them. The second step is that they're able to take what they're observing and distill it into patterns. And so what she could distill from what she'd observed is the negativity, the stress, but on the other side of the juxtaposition was the bright colors, the optimism, the hope. And so with those patterns, she did the next step, which is number 3, and that she was able to relate that idea of hope, optimism, and a time of negativity and fear into the work that they were doing, which was the marketing campaign she was working on. And she used that for step 4, which is to generate ideas. So previously, or if you were not the Kathy Button Bell, you would probably gather people around, maybe get your agency together and say, okay, we've got to brainstorm ideas because sales are down and we're in a financial crisis. And the work that comes out of that kind of idea generation is never inspired work. Did that answer your question?
That was beautifully worded. And one takeaway that I really wanted to highlight from that was reverse engineering inspiration to direct innovative thoughts into innovation is essentially where one should begin. Thank you very much for that.
That's wonderful. Nicely said. Also, add to that, being mindful and being consistent. You want to be innovative, be mindful of your present. That will lead to your environment, community, and be consistent, as Carla has said. What a beautiful insights we had tonight. Thank you so much for sharing that. My last question to you, I'm going to take too few minutes of your time, but I need your action. You have 10 books and you are a bestseller. How does it feel to be a bestseller?
It's pretty amazing. And it's not about that the book is the bestseller. It's what it means to be a bestseller. And I had originally intended to be a history professor. My degree, I have a master's in history. It's about teaching people how to think about the work that they do. And to me, I mean, because I write business and marketing type books, to have so many people to be able to help who learn from what you write, to me is the best feeling ever.
Nice. Thank you. You're very clap hands. Thank you so much.
Thank you
Actually,
very much,
all of
Carla.
you.
Appreciate
Absolutely. I loved your questions. This was very fun.
It's nice to see you.
You too.
Thank you, Carla.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
So what we'll do, guys, we'll take 5 minutes break. We'll come back and finish with the TED Talk, the last assignment of the night, and then we'll call it a night. Carla, thank you so much for coming.
You're welcome. This was very fun. Thanks for having me.